happens. We know what's happened leading up to this meeting.
Sure.
So does anything change?
I'm actually a little more sanguine around what could happen to rates, partly because the real key that you've seen in the last several months with this large increase in particularly the longer end and the belly, but not so much the front end that's more affected by the Fed, is you've seen a dramatic rise in real rates. The reason why everybody hated treasuries when they were only being bought by the Fed, to your point, is that there's really no real return with inflation at whatever level, and you can argue about even what that is, and certainly whatever level it may be, you are guaranteeing yourself a negative return. And that's pre-tax for those folks that are taxable. So that's not attractive. Now you actually have a positive real return. Hooray, it's not great. It's about 1% below where it was in the middle of the last decade in the 2000s. So maybe you have another 1% to go, but with falling inflation, not rising inflation, you've seen rising rates. That's very, very unusual. So falling inflation, rising rates gives you at least some prospect of return. So with the slower kind of stall speed, a kind of economy in the United States, 2% sort of seems where we are. I think it's not as terrible as the recent rate rise would lead folks to believe.
Where do you think the 10-year will be at the end of the year?
Yeah.
At least you admit it.
Sure, no. Every forecaster says, well, I'm forecasting this, so now it's changed. Now I'm forecasting, higher or whatever. That's true across the board.
In general, I'll let you have a range.
Sure. So let's start with fundamentally where, quote unquote, should it be, and as a sort of as a starting point, and then we can talk about sentiment. So, if you look at the possible path of Fed changes, right? So, say we do about 180,000 jobs a month. That's kind of sort of what we've been averaging, and we do that for a long time, for years. To say that we're going to do that is ridiculous, but it's a simplifying assumption. This is what we have seen, so what are we going to see going forward? And the Fed eventually normalizes rates to, say, 4% as a number. What you're looking at for fair value of treasuries is, kind of in the low 3% area, so not too different from here. I think that the excitement around owning treasuries is really not there, and what you're going to have to do is get other kinds of investors interested in the returns that those might generate. And that will only occur as and if there's sort of a little shakeup. We had a little bit of a scare around Syria, that sort of geopolitical tension. Treasuries do gain a bid when things are a little scary. Usually. And so I think it's likely we'll see some sort of bump just because we always do, and it'll highlight that value and kind of clean up the market a little bit. But from a fair value perspective, low threes, because people kind of don't want it and want to rotate, maybe mid 3% by the end of the